Hello and welcome to Denix versus Culsa. We've got a request edition today, and I'll be just doing a bit of a review on the Denix 1851 Ranger, Denix 1860 Army, and Culsa 36 caliber 1862 Confederate. My understanding is that not made by Colt, it's just basically a Colt copy made by the Confederacy to keep up with the demands for manufacturing of pistols. And I won't get into all the history of all of that because there's plenty of other people who can tell you all about that more accurately. But for the intents and purposes of comparing these three pistols, we've got a 45 caliber, and a 36 caliber. We've got the sort of engraved, dare I say, more embossed patterning on the 1851, an octagonal barrel, which is just beautiful. The 1860 comes with a round barrel and real wooden grips. 1850 comes with the plastic grips on it that has the eagle on the other side that I have actually dirtied up just a little bit to give it a little bit more authenticity. And the grips on this, as I mentioned, on the 1860 are real wood, and look, again, they're not as nicely finished as what the original Colt 1860s were. When you look at all of the actual images of the nice finish on these handles, this is a bit underdone, but hey, for a imitation display piece, they do all right. Denix. And then with the 1862 Confederate 36 caliber, so it's a much smaller pistol, no doubt, as you've already noticed. There is some engravings on this particular pistol as well, which Denix do not have. This says Culsa non-firing replica on one side, and it says 36 caliber black powder or something like that, black powder 36 caliber on the other. A little bit more. It does have a very nicely finished handle on the Culsa, probably more in line with what the actual Colts would have had, which is funny because this is the Confederate version. And for all the diehard Clint Eastwood people out there, I do realise that he would have had more in line with the 1851 octagonal barrel, probably more in line with this particular colour palette with the snakeskin grips on it. But as I may have mentioned, I already have these, and I'm really looking for display pieces that vary as much as possible from one pistol to another, and I really wanted this patina finish that just has a lovely realistic look to it. So I was prepared to sacrifice the authenticity from the movie. Let's face it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The pistols are a bit of a joke anyway because they didn't have any cartridge conversion at that point of the dating of that movie, at least in where it's supposed to be dated in the history of time. So, okay, we're going to start off with the 1851. No real, as I say, text on the barrel. There's on this particular version, which is interesting, whereas on every other Denix you'll ever get, there's the Denix branding on it, with that little triangle that you see there, made in Spain, Denix made in Spain. None of that obviously evident on the 1851 because of the engraving, and I just love that they've really not spoiled it by putting Denix all over that engraving. But I call it engraving, it's more of an embossing, really, isn't it? You look at the genuine pistols of these varieties, and they are engraved with absolute precision by master engravers, and so that they do look quite a bit different. I really do love the look of this pistol as a display piece because of its, they call it a nickel plating, but really it's more of a chrome finish, which, they did exist in this type of chrome from what I can gather, but this is almost too chromy. If I look at if we go to the 1873, just for a moment, the pistol finish, the nickel finish, was probably more in line with like what this particular what Culsa represent, and less like a chrome finish. But hey, maybe I'm splitting hairs. I'm not a big fan of the chrome finish on the single action armies or any of the pistols that Denix do, because it just looks a little bit tacky. I don't know. I do see some of those chrome finishes in movies, and I just really wonder whether they existed. But you know, some of you can tell me if they have, if they do exist. That's fine. But I prefer this particular nickel finish. It just looks a little bit more genuine. But anyway, we're not doing 1873 today. I'll try and keep on track. So as a pistol, needless to say, it's a big one. It's got quite a bit of weight to it, and it's got a lovely trigger hammer action. It's got a really nice crunch. Sounds like 3 clicks, but I think it's only 2. Try that again. Oh, so it's got kind of 3. As we all know, Colts are best known for their 4-click action on the hammer pull. So look, that's pretty realistic. There's, you know, a bit of rattle going on here. I don't think you'd find that in the original. Most of that noise is coming from the drum that sort of doesn't sit as tightly as perhaps it should. Its action is much the same as you'll find on the 1860 Army, and that is that you've got 1 pull, and then with that, it turns, which it's starting to sound a bit like a Tonka truck, whereas the actual Colts really did have a nice high clicking noise, and you could spin that drum with a lot more ease than what you can on these imitation ones. And then once you've pulled it back to the second one, it locks into place, but it doesn't fully lock. You can still wobble it just a little bit, and then, you know, the full load. So, but all in all, a nice action. I've actually painted the caps where the caps would go gold to make it look as though that I've had caps placed on the end of the capping ends there, just to give it a little bit more realism. I've even seen on YouTube where someone has put a bit of copper tubing inside the bullet chambers, and then put a ball bearing at the end of it, and just glued the ball bearing at the end of it so that it actually looks like the weapon is loaded with some cap and ball. Although they would have, to be more genuine, have put some kind of wax or product over the top of it so that it doesn't let water in and to spoil the gunpowder, and perhaps even create a crossfire between one chamber and another. So, you know, having the ball showing at the end of it isn't really almost accurate. The other feature to these, really, outside of the, being able to pull back the hammer and firing them, is just the loading rod here, which would have had to have been done whilst the barrel was on a holding sort of device, or perhaps between your legs, and then of course that just rams the ball back down into the chamber once it's loaded with gunpowder. We're not doing that today because these are fake weapons. So that just locks nicely into place. My understanding is that in some of these Colts originally, that the clipping system here wasn't great, and so that they would quite often, you'd fire the gun and then all of the sudden the rod would drop down, which I can't imagine would have been too great for the weapon, and then reholstering it would be almost impossible. You may as well throw it away and grab another weapon. I can only imagine what it was like to load these types of things. So slow, you go up, have to load it in the morning, you get 6 shots, and then pretty much you put it back in your holster, and that's it for the day. 1860, same but different. Wooden grips, as I mentioned earlier, not probably a great finish against the real Colts, but it's got a bit more weight actually than the 1851, which is interesting. I don't know whether that's because it's got a long, well, I don't even know whether it does have a longer barrel. It's just maybe got a more solid fill-in of that Zamak material in the actual barrel here, because it does feel quite a bit heavier. It's got a little bit of rattling around going on. The hammer one, which frees up the drum, and again I've coloured the caps to make it look as though they've got live caps on them. And then 2. So you've got 2, but it sounds like 3. kind of a double click at the end there. I think they do sound really nice though. It sounds a bit Tonka trucky still, and there is a bit of movement within the actual looseness of it all, but I don't mind that. And look, once it's actually the hammer's down, it's reasonably well locked in place. But of course, you know, it has the same kind of ramrod system for loading, and that's the way they are. But you know, I think the fake brass work that they do on these is really good, really. They look fairly genuine. I hope this one doesn't get the same kind of corrosion that my Winchester has, and that accidentally cleaned off all that brass, because it's not brass, of course. It's just a painted aluminium, coloured aluminium, or coloured Zamac, whatever it is. And that really is the both of the Denix. Yeah, handsome looking pistols. So now to compare that with my Culsa 1862, again, which is considerably smaller because it's a smaller caliber. But from a point of view of function, it does everything exactly the same as the Denix. However, the hammer does have another system involved in it, another click. So we can pull back the hammer here. There it is. You've got to be really careful. You only just pull it just back a little bit, and that gives you a really nice sounding barrel. I love the sound of that a lot better than I do the Denix. And then you've got another click. God, shooting with one hand is never easy. You've got another click, like that, and then it locks it into place. You can't actually turn the drum. And then the full click is where it's ready to fire that cap, or bullet as it might be. Or primer to the actual bullet on a real weapon. The latch system for the ramrod, much the same, and operating of the, I won't bother because you've already seen me do it twice, and I don't want to do the same thing again and again and again. What you can do with these particular Culsas is you can remove the pin on this side, I think, yep. Remove this particular pin. It's held into place a little bit by this screw. When I actually got the pistol delivered, this pin just fell out. And when you actually pull this pin out, you can then pull off the whole barrel system, and you can slide the drum off a pin, and then you can, you know, clean the weapon that way. I suspect it wouldn't have been for reloading as much as it would if you probably load it whilst you had the drum out, perhaps, but because it might be a little bit easier. But that was more in line with cleaning the weapon than it was for reloading. Reloading was usually done using the ramrod in an elevated position, so that, you know, you could pour the gunpowder in and so forth. But from a point of view of sound and hammer and handle, oh gee, I love this thing. It's just got a really genuine sound on the hammer, but it does have a hairline trigger, I think is the term. You just need to slightly, and it sets it off the trigger, just slightly. Whereas the Denix, you've really got to pull the trigger. You're probably not demonstrating that well, but trust me, that is a hairline trigger on that Culsa. You'd shoot your own face off if it was loaded. Maybe not. I don't know if that was meant to be, or whether each of these pistols is one different from the other. But there it is. And so I am aware. I don't know if I've said it, you know, I'm quite aware that this isn't the genuine type of pistol used in the Clint Eastwood movies. I just wanted this with the extra patina and the snakeskin grips on it, because I already had an 1851 in that particular finish, an 1860 in that finish, and I wanted that sort of patina. In some of the other Clint Eastwood movies, no doubt the 1873 was used, but it's a really pretty looking set when you get the 1862 Kolser in there. It does actually sort of almost disappear into the holster, but I'm going to do another video on the holsters, so I won't go too far into that. All right, well, that's my review of Denix versus Culsa Confederate pistols. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, shoot them across to me. And thank you to all those people who have subscribed. I'm not doing this for any kind of money. It's just love for these toys that I do it. So, and I was having trouble finding information on YouTube or anywhere about the comparisons between Denix and Culsa. All right, till next time, catch you soon. Bye.